in society. We mentioned social entrepreneurship, and a lot of that is, focus on making change in society in multiple different ways. So go ahead and flip the slide. So Keeley's going to talk about a lot of solutions that exist for employers.
Okay, I'm not going to bore you guys with the Affordable Care Act in detail, but I do want to point out to you that the government has recognized that employee wellness programs hosted by employers are very important. And actually, there's a part of the ACA that provides incentives for employers to have employee wellness programs. Not yet. Thank you. And employee wellness programs are generally offered by employers for the purpose of improving their employees' health and wellness. I do want to point out that employee wellness programs are not new. They've been around since the 1970s. However, studies are starting to show that they are very cost-effective, and they actually produce results in lowering, preventable diseases, absenteeism of employees. Now you can change. So some of the benefits that is being promoted for employee wellness programs. There are tax incentives depending on what state you're in. Massachusetts, Kentucky, and Indiana actually give employers tax incentives right now. Also, the federal government is considering doing a tax incentive for employers who implement employee wellness programs. Currently, there is a government grant that small businesses can get if they implement an employee wellness program. If you're interested in that, that's expiring in 2014. I'm hoping that they extend it they extend it beyond that. But that is currently the deadline of this year. There's been a number of studies done, and there's a big study that did an analysis of 36 companies that had successful employee wellness programs. And they discovered that for every dollar invested in an employee wellness program, employers got $6 back, which is actually a great investment. This actually showed itself in that they were getting $2.73 for every dollar as a result of the reduced absenteeism. So as their employees got healthier, they stopped skipping work and they started coming in more. They also saw that their programs were reducing sick leave, health insurance premiums, disability costs by 25%. So it pays to invest in your employees. Some of the examples of employee wellness programs, many of it we all probably have an idea of what they are, such as on-site screenings for different, like your cholesterol or flu shots. I don't know if anyone's worked in some of the corporate America businesses, but they'll come on site, give you a flu shot to help you out. Some places have on-site gyms, personal trainers. Some offer classes such as yoga and Pilates. Often businesses will have maybe a lunch and learn on nutrition and have someone come in. A lot of places are switching, making sure they have healthier food on the premises if they have a cafeteria. But I want to point out that wellness is so much more than the traditional eating healthy, working out. It's also improving the mindset of your employees. So that means if recognizing your culture, if you have a culture where your employees are going to be working around the clock, 12-hour days, then you might want to implement a concierge service that allows them to get their dry cleaning done, that helps them out. I've been pointing out to people on the younger generation, I believe what is the millennials, are much more into social media versus the baby boomers. So I let employers know, have some way of implementing social media into their lives. That's how it's incorporated, that's how they live, and that will help out with their wellness. So here's an example of some of the larger companies and what they're offering for their wellness programs. You see most of it is traditional. A lot of them rely on web-based resources, which I'm not a fan on. I'm such a hands-on type of person. And many employees actually don't participate in these web-based because they don't feel like they're getting the support that they need. So they just feel like they go somewhere on the web and someone tells them, hey, you need to lose weight, or good luck with that. Many larger businesses do have smoking cessation. That is a popular thing, getting people off smoking because of the associated health costs with that. And then you'll see it going down, weight loss programs, wellness newsletters, lifestyle coaching. But once again, I want to point out that taking care of your employees it's so much more incorporating, making it a good environment for them to work in. Next slide. Okay. Many people feel that big businesses can do this. So if you're the one person or you have like maybe three, how do we incorporate wellness into our business, and is it going to cost a lot? And actually, here's some ideas of implementing wellness, just absolutely free, won't cost you anything. Just making sure you give your employees time to take a regular stretch, take a walk, get a breather. Giving a quiet area for meditation, which is nice. Here on Friday, we did a mindful meditation, which was really helpful. Having a walking program, discouraging smoking at work, making sure there's just healthy snacks that are around, or having guest speakers come in. Oftentimes, people from the hospitals or a local fitness gym will come in for free and speak to your employees. So there's ways to implement this if you're a small business without it costing anything or very little. Next slide. So here's some more. It's innovate, get creative. If you have a potluck, make it a salad potluck versus, greasy food. Movie hour documentaries. Find out mostly what your workers are about. When you start adding in employees into your business and as you grow, keep an eye on what their interests are, what motivates them, and stay in touch with that. Communication is really, really big. There's also, commuting prizes, like can you do green commuting, like who can ride their bike to work or take the bus to save the environment. And then just stress relievers, like ping pong and things of that sort, or giving an extra 15 minutes for those who want to take a walk. But most importantly, as you're starting out now, if you start putting these practices into place yourself, then when you take on more people, you're going to be leading by example, and you're going to be setting the path for your future employees. Next slide.
Thank you. So again, some of you might not have a large staff just yet, but these are the types of things that you also need to think about as you're thinking about growing your businesses. And the programs are great, but some of the big issues that are out there where you have an actual advantage is if you remember the slide of the typical corporate America as I remember it, you've got to change the culture if you're trying to adopt more of a wellness-focused environment. And that's really hard. I once had one of my professors in college that it was an organizational behavior class, and I remember her saying very specifically, never try to change the culture. Okay, and because it's a very, very difficult thing to do, very difficult to pull off. But that's great advice when you're in a 301 class in college. But what the reality is, well, look, if I want to save money on my insurance premiums, I want to have a happier, healthier work environment with less absenteeism, I'm going to have to do this. Now, everybody here is in a fantastic role because you don't have to wait until you have, 50, 60 employees or even more, thousands of employees. And some of you may get there. That's why you're here. Don't change it. Start from the beginning now and try to build that into your environment and build it into the culture of your company. And that's what I mean by taking a proactive approach. And the things that we'll do to achieve that is to sit back as you're growing. Don't think just about your product, but think about what you want your company to be, what you want the personality of the company to be. That's what we mean by culture. And then hire into that culture. Once you hire into it, you want to sustain and grow it. The things that you do today might not be applicable tomorrow. People change. The age of your workforce changes. A lot of things change, so you want to keep monitoring that and building more things to keep people's interest and to keep pace with who they are. And then most importantly, and Keeley had just mentioned, is leading by example. Okay. So we'll go into the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about visualizing your company culture and thinking about wellness. And again, culture is the personality of your company, and that's big. That's how people perceive you, not just your product. but how they perceive the company and actually doing business with them. Think about, are you aiming for a culture that's customer service oriented, hardworking? Are they more about money than service? And some companies are. It's commodity product. It might be more about lowest price than anything else. They're things that you have to consciously think about. You want to pick the values and the behaviors that work best for your company. But while you're doing that, and some of you may not have done this yet, but you do want to get, it sounds textbooky, get mission, vision, values for your company established. When you have that, you want to create a culture that's in alignment with that. If they're diametrically opposed to one another, or there's some things that are in conflict, you'll find it almost impossible to execute if they're not all in line. And again, you're thinking today about, getting your thoughts and ideas out there, trying to get successful. But it's good time to start laying the groundwork for when you do start to grow. And some of you might be getting there, right? You'll be prepared. Just want to go on to the next slide. And I just wanted, at this point, there's a lot of talking going on, but wanted to take a couple of minutes, and if you're comfortable, just share a few things. Put yourself, if you are there right now where you're starting to grow and hire employees, and share with the group some things that you would like to see, some characteristics of your company's culture. If anybody, so.
Exercise, turn in somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, moving around.
Great. All right. Let's see. Yes.
The way I view our culture as opposed to maybe what I've experienced in corporate America is that we're more of like an aggregation of like all of our skills and abilities. Whereas we have a mission statement, we're different because we are amorphous and we can adapt.
Right.
Because there's lots of us, and we're not socialized formally like in other companies.
Yeah.
So I think we have a leg up in that sense that we can grow and learn in a personable way, in a way that's kind of more humane than forced.
Yeah. And it almost feels that way, Like I said, when you walk through the door, it kind of feels that way here.
Can I give me a couple? When I interview someone, if they're obese or smoke, generally the interview ends in my mind. People don't realize that. People think, there's no discrimination going on. It happens.
Yep.
So that's one thing. I mean, we hired, young or, people in the 40s and that are healthy. But the problem I say our culture right now is we're so slammed. The only time we get to the gym is when we take our kids to the gym and drop them off at childcare.
Yeah.
So really very interested in what you have to say, because we need, we're trying to change our corporate culture and also incorporate our families into that culture.
Right. And that's actually one of the recommendations that we have is to build and include families in the offerings that you have. There's family karate classes are starting to be popular so you're not necessarily taking away from the family time, but you're also doing something that's good. And I have a couple of other examples to share to make it real. Yeah.
One of the things I did either by plan or slightly haphazardly is I told myself I would not commute, that I would try to build in a walk to work just so that I knew I had some exercise in the day. And even my little 8-minute bike ride, I can't do without it. If I have to drive and I drive, if I have to go somewhere and I drive the car and park it here, I feel like I just haven't woken up.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for almost 8 years. And I know a lot of folks, I know economy.com is about 110 people that work there. They moved, the founders of that company, they wanted to move into town because they believe in this kind of town life. But strangely, they hire a lot of students, and the students come in and they say it's too expensive in town, so they buy rent like a couple miles away, but then they have to get the car, which costs money, and because they're economists. But I think that there's something there that's maybe more abstract, but if people re-inhabited cities and walked, that would go a long way. You don't need to go to the gym if you walk a mile to work.
Right. Good.
And back every day.
And that's one of the things, as we're saying, leading by example. And, you know, as you have employees, is they're seeing you like, hey, I'm talking about wellness, but, you know, I'm riding my bike to work and I'm encouraging other people to do it. And they're the types of things that I say kind of helps you build it in versus trying to say, okay, now all of a sudden, everybody, let's try to ride our bikes to work. You know? So, good. So things to think of, and we've just kind of started that thought process, are if I want to build wellness into part of my company culture, along with, you know, my focus on customer service, priority of customer service versus price competition, but I know that I want to build wellness in. There's things that you can do. Let's say when you're starting to branch out, if you happen to leave, you're starting to grow and get an office. Well, think about the work environment in that office. Is it in a place where a lot of people can walk? Is there a bike route that's close by to encourage commuting into work? How close is the closest gym? Is it close enough that somebody can walk across the street? Now, not just the workout and the eating those things, but how about a daycare? We talked about people being family life, proximity to daycare. Maybe you're just renting, you have the opportunity to rent an office that's in a building that has a daycare in the first, you know, down on the first floor. Well, that's a huge stress relief. I can tell you I've been there many times myself. You know, my kid being the last one to pick up. Talk about being stressed out. I want your kid to be the last one there, but when you can just run downstairs, you know, grab them and bring them back up. The general look and feel of the work environment, how does it feel if you're renting an office when they walk through the door? Feels pretty good when I walk through this door. It's nice and bright. There's a lot of glass in the front. It's not, you know, doom and gloom. And these are the choices that you have when we're building into, right, versus already being in a place for 10 years and having to rip down the paneling. So you're in a good place to do that. The commitment to the work-life balance and keeping stress in check. We all have stress. We talked about on the innovation, things like having some financial seminars or just tips and tricks, because money happens to be one of the things that causes the most stress. Not just the clock running, but how I'm going to pay that next bill. And it doesn't matter if you're compensating your employees very well or not well. Everybody's got something to think about when it comes to money. Work-family balance, when we talked about, again, if the culture is working hard, accountable, get things done no matter what, well, that could be opposed to having time to go to the gym, or any free time that I have, I want to spend with my family or my friends. Well, then it's offering group activities, suggesting or getting the discount somewhere local that has some fun activities for the family. Maybe it's a cooking class that you bring on site. It's after hours. The family comes. I mean, there's a lot of different creative things you can do. They don't have to necessarily be working out 10 times a week. Because if you can't work out, even if you've got a physical situation that says you can't, all of these other things you can do can help with, you know, your mind and your general well-being to help build that culture. Rewards and recognition is another thing that you might want to think of from the beginning. You know, you have that first employee. You may have only one employee. That doesn't mean you have to have a very extensive rewards, annual bonus, all that kind of stuff. But even a gift card once in a while because they did a nice job. That doesn't sound like wellness. It's not, you know, a piece of fruit, but it's still something that contributes to their healthiness up here. It makes them feel good. The visible leadership we had already talked about a few times. And then having your employees, again, one or two, have a brainstorming session. You don't have to have a formal wellness program, but bring them around the table and say, you know, we're working really hard. You know, we're an innovative company. We're a software startup. We have a lot of things going on out there in competition. What can we do as a group that would make us all feel better? And you'd be surprised the simple things that they'll come up with, simple things that you would come up with to just make your workday a little bit less stressful. And finally, letting people know it's okay to take a break, right? I've worked in a lot of environments where, and you know, whether it was company pressure or my own pressure, I felt like, you know, I can't take a break. You know, I got to keep going and going and going. What are people going to think if I'm just kicked back at my desk for a minute? It should be okay, you know, and
I think that's a huge one, because I think productivity is so deceiving. It seems like if you work, 14 hours a day, you're going to get more done than everybody else, but really you might spend 8 of those hours just sitting around with your brain and mush because you've been
Right.
overworking yourself, right?
Exactly.
So I know people who are really good at, they might work a 5 or 6 hour day and get more done than,
Right.
so
Yep.
I think that's huge too, figuring out how to maximize your productivity, and it's not always just by working more hours.
Exactly. And I think I might even have it somewhere in the slide deck, but we're so married to slides anymore when we have discussions. But I think it's Google that actually has these little pods, sleep pods, where they can go and say, yeah, it's okay, go recharge yourself if you need to. So.
I saw Henry sleeping on the couch one day.
He's recharging, he's meditating. But one of the things that some people worry about, well, if I do this, especially now, again, if you're building this into your culture, you don't have as much of a risk. But if you're trying to change the culture with a company that's, pretty fast-paced, hard-working, and you can, they look at this stuff and they may be like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to have a culture of slackers, No, that's not what we're saying. They can have nappy time anytime they want. It's okay to leave for a karate class and things. Well, no, you're not, because it doesn't mean that your people aren't accountable. Okay, it doesn't mean that they don't have goals and objectives. All that stays the same. Okay, but the company that's pushing and not offering these things are going to have miserable people. The people that are offering these things, they actually wind up seeing they are meeting their goals. Okay, they do have that sense of accountability, and they wind up having more loyalty to you. So, and once they have that loyalty, they're going to perform better. So don't worry about that, and just continue to support that positive mindset. So if there is a problem, problems are going to happen everywhere. Just keep a positive mindset about the issues. So no, you're not going to have a culture of slackers. Oh, yeah, I thought that was me. It's the same round. Good. A couple of examples on the next slide that we have are Wegmans. And one thing that's interesting about Wegmans is that their culture that they have for their employees is also kind of the culture that they encourage for their customers. They also offer some of the wellness events that they have for their employees to their customers. They have some challenges. They have on-site yoga. They have a trainer that will come in to help them run a 5K, all kinds of fun stuff. And they are one of the, if you do any research, they're one of the companies that pops up quite a bit. One of the statistics then is over 5 years between 2008 and 13, the share of Wegmans actually has 44,000 employees. Their high blood pressure rates dropped 24% to 14%. And they saw a similar drop in high blood pressure, their body mass indices, and several other key, hard factors of success in their people.
That's pretty amazing for a company that's surrounded by food.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
But if you go in and you compare it to going into the Giant, there's a health difference.
It is. As soon as you walk through that front door, it's all sliced up and peeled and ready to go.
And I believe Wegmans actually, when they expand, they take their best employees to open up their next place.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what Chris means, like the people. It's just like,
Yeah.
night and day really, I think.
And that, and the good thing is, and that's their culture. That's the culture they set, and they did such a good job, and it was so strong that even after the founder passed, that culture continued to perpetuate. Which means, yes, it truly was in the culture. It wasn't just that one person that was making it happen. Safeway is another pinnacle example with their, now they do a lot of traditional wellness, on-site fitness centers and daycares, and those did their challenges. They also include family members. But their statistics are remarkable. They've got a 47% improved glucose levels, 63% improved cholesterol, 20% BMI, 37% reduction in nicotine. So they did a really good job with their smoking cessation programs. And I think half of the people involved in the program improved their blood pressure. So, and then finally, so we talked about how important it is then and the opportunity that you have with new businesses to build wellness into a positive culture. And a little bit we started to get into hiring candidates. So there's another place, instead of trying to change people, well, on the next slide, how do I look for people that might fit this culture and build them in and hire them in? Well, it's hard to say, to somebody, how many triathlons do you complete a year? Do you go to the gym? You don't want to discriminate. Exactly. I mean, you don't want to discriminate against them just because they might be overweight. It could be genetic. There could be a lot of different things going on. But in general, outside of, what their weight might be, just look at their general appearance. Do they appear to care about themselves? Are they clean? Not whether their hair's long or short, that's different. But, do they just have that general, it's almost intuitive kind of a appearance that, this person seems, to care. They kind of tuck their shirt in a little bit to show up today. How well do they answer questions? You can ask questions about stress relief, and I've got an example of one, and see how well they respond to that. Okay, so then you can see if there's somebody that works well under stress, and if they do, or even if they don't, if they've got some good answers for what they do about it, and they kind of know themselves a bit. That's sort of what you're looking for, to the people know their strengths and weaknesses, so that when they come into the culture, they'll be very easy to help them adapt to your environment. You can conduct personality profiles. There's a lot of different assessments that are created, even 1 or 2 employees that hire, that you can run. You pay $100, $150 or whatever it might be. Now, of course, if you want to get into a full-blown Myers-Briggs or something like that, you're going to pay a lot more. But there's some things out there, that you can legally use as a tool for understanding more about that person and seeing if they fit.
Kevin, can you explain inbound hiring and where?
So I guess something that we're really enthusiastic about here is like the concept of inbound hiring, where it's kind of hiring people who really contribute to the community. So building a community out, and a lot of the positions start as something like volunteer-based work, essentially.
Yeah.
Seeing who works well and who's willing to put the time in and become a part of your culture, your community, and then hiring the people that really spearhead that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And even if you're, you're a well-established company, you still can participate in internship programs. If you need some very experienced programmers, let's say, that might not be willing to do something on a trial basis, like an internship or anything like that, you could always do a rent-to-own, right, a contract to hire. To see. Again, it depends on how much effort and energy you want to put into building that proactively.
Just for the record, I would caution all of you against hiring or trying to get an intern in an unpaid situation. Due to the black swan case, you could get into a lot of trouble. The Department of Labor is really cracking down on that.
Yeah, thank you. The lawyer me was like,
Yeah, a little bit to that of, don't offend, don't discriminate. A couple of questions that you can ask that should be safe questions, but open-ended, that you can start to get a feel of what motivates that employee and what they're all about and how that might fit with that culture, is what achievements, professional or personal, are you proud of? The person talks a lot about family, you're going to know, okay, good thing I have these programs that might be able to support them. If they start talking about a lot of sports and things, you'll know that there's somebody that's probably a little more fit. Ask them, how do you handle stress in the workplace? That's a pretty basic question. Asking them about their motivation to succeed. And again, these are open-ended questions that they're going to start. It's not necessarily the answer that you're looking for. It's more letting them talk and learning more about that individual and who they are as a whole, and then seeing whether they fit in with those things that you brainstormed back in the beginning. And of course here, we're looking more for that slant of the wellness-minded person. Ask them, what are the employee benefits that are most important to you? Fair question. What do I need to offer to keep this person happy? And they might bring things up like, well, I hope you allow me to go for a walk. That's the way I de-stress. Ask them to describe the work environment that they would thrive within, who their role model is, and again, you'll start to feel, are they a go-getter? Who are they looking up to? And what do they like to do with their free time? Again. So they're just a couple basic questions that are relatively safe questions, and will allow you to learn a lot more about that person. Does anybody have any other questions that you think you might be able to ask?
So with regard to small businesses, have you seen any kind of an effort to do any kind of like a co-op in terms of healthy lifestyle things? The university, for example, has a myriad of opportunities to improve your health. We have all those things that you listed, right? But small businesses cannot afford to do that. Can small businesses join together to try to get a better rate?
And that's kind of a little bit about what we're saving about ourselves and sort of what our mission is all about in helping kind of tie the small person to the small company that might not otherwise know about them. The other thing is, too, that Keeley had mentioned through at least 2014, we'll see if that gets renewed, are some of the grants for the smaller companies. Is it under 50 employees?
Under 50 employees, that tax incentive they're talking about putting forth, where you will get $200 back per employee up to, I'm sorry, the tax incentive, the tax grant is up to $100 per employee.
Okay.
And then there's other funds, but I'm thinking of the proposal where they said under a certain amount of small businesses can actually get, if the proposal goes through, $200 per employee up to $200, and then $100 per employee the government would give back to you.
Yeah.
Right now, your employee wellness programs are just tax deductions on your income tax.
And some of the grants, we were talking about that the other day, should we get a grant, so, should we figure out, and I'm looking at Keeley, and she's like, I don't want to get into writing grants, but but if that gets renewed and we extend that, then we'll probably look for a partner to help us so that we can, put the smaller businesses in touch with a grant writer to help them get some funds to help out with those things.
So let me just jump in. Are we moving into certified Q&A? We got about 10 minutes.
We're just gonna go through a few more specific details.
Okay.
Yeah, we got
About 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Fine.
Oh, sorry.
Next slide.
Next slide. So we talked about hiring, wellness programs, and then we just quickly wanted to talk about how to sustain it and grow your culture. And one, it goes back to your core values. Know what they are, and then you incorporate it in every facet of your business. Because if it's not coming from the top down, it's really not going to work. So if you have HR and your management systems, have checks and balances that reinforce your core values. Your job descriptions, make sure you're describing the qualities of the ideal candidate, not just what they need to be able to do, but actually who are you looking for? People will weed themselves out if they don't fit that description. Your hiring process, you, Kevin, were talking about taking it slow, hiring people. Treat it like a courtship. Hopefully most of us in our personal relationships, we take time to get to know a candidate. Companies now, some of them are starting to slow down and do a number of different interviews. I know Zappos, it could take like 4 to 5 months to get hired at Zappos because so many people are interviewing you. They invite their prospective candidates to events so other employees can get to know them and give their feedback. They'll meet you for dinner to see what you're like at dinner. So they're taking the hiring process very slow, so they're making sure they're hiring people that fit their company culture. And then add it into your job training, enforce your values there, because that's making sure you get the message out to all your new trainees. Like just making sure it's reinforced, everyone's giving the same message. And then of course, make sure it's on a day-to-day work environment. It's that leading by example, making sure that you're living up to the values. So that kind of goes into what you're saying. If you're telling people, sure, you can work out, but the environment is that they're feeling, I can't take time off, there's a conflict there. And so you're not going to get people to work out.
One of my favorite examples, sorry, it was the last company that I had worked for was very, very health and fitness aware. The executives were all Ironman, and we had a corporate gym, and if you worked out, you were allowed an extra 15 minutes for your lunch. Mm-hmm. And the executives were so dead set on that, you don't dare set a meeting with them anytime before 1:30. Because 12 to 1:30 was workout, not just for themselves, and they were there, but also as respect, like, all right, everybody, that's workout time. And it was super, I never worked so hard for any company other than that company, but, you know, at the same time, you know, that was a hard, fast rule, and they were there doing it too, so.
Next slide. So we did a quick good sustainment versus bad sustainment. Wegmans versus Walmart. Wegmans' whole culture is built around taking care of their people because they feel if they take care of their people, it will filter to the customer. And they have a very, very strong commitment to their employees. They have one of the best employee benefit programs in large companies. I think they're like #1 in the retail, or I guess food retail. And then you look over at Walmart, who is pretty much a symbol of what's wrong with how you treat your employees, where the average worker makes $8.81 an hour, and Walmart is the largest retailer employer in Pennsylvania. And the majority of their workers are supplementing their income with public assistance. And we all know from the news, they're not very happy. Walmart has made it very clear they're against unions, and they often are heard about retaliating against employees who kind of speak up. And the thing is, Sam Martin was not that way. He actually wanted to take care of his employees. So something's gotten lost as they've grown. Next slide. So the last one is just, once again, lead by example. As you guys are starting out, be very aware of what your values are and make sure that as you're growing, it's being incorporated in everything you do and that you're reinforcing it. If you are someone who's really hard, if you're like Apple, where they demand the top and innovate and it works for Apple, then that's who you're going to focus on and you're going to hire. If you want to be a little bit more, relaxed, more like Zappos, of have a party every day and work, then make sure that your culture represents that. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to Anita that's going to give a talk about us.
Thank you. As we mentioned it before, can you switch the slide? That we are local entrepreneurs and we would like to be the choice of wellness providers in the area. We assess, create, and improve wellness programs, and if you have an existing one, we go and check and give suggestion to improve. Our mission is to maximize the benefits of employee wellness programs through wellness consulting and by uniting wellness teams with local entrepreneurs. Our main difference from bigger wellness providers are we like to use small local businesses as partners, and we recommend them for companies to use. Our mission is to become, as I mentioned it before, the choice of regional wellness consulting of services for small and mid-sized companies. And the next slide, we're just going to go over a little bit. We provide a full cycle employee wellness programs. First, we check for wellness objectives, and then we analyze the existing ones, and we review the data, whatever is there, and benchmark against the desired state. Then we design the program, and that's where our expertise are coming in. We also recommend wellness providers and go over the ROIs, which is very important for companies to know the return. And then we also have with implementation, we recommend small businesses and to use. And it's important to monitor and go back and see is there any improvements, and if not, we recommend changes, and it's a full cycle, going back, continuing. Next slide, please.
One of the things is, you know, a lot of the wellness partners out there do a piece of that cycle, and that's where we're offering the differentiation, is everything from the beginning, you know, the understanding of the rules and regulations, right on through to the service implementation, which is where we pull into our peer entrepreneurs. That's the networking side of what we do. We might get a personal trainer that's maybe got 2 people versus a whole staff of 20. And we look at, when we're talking about culture, we spend a lot of time looking at the company culture and then aligning the different providers with people that kind of meet. That's the sort of the personal touch. Like, I think this group would be good for you.
And we also test these providers on ourselves. We use a personal trainer, the yoga teacher, the physical therapist. So we're confident that they are professional. Just a few words, we already mentioned Keeley is an attorney. She left her corporate business a year ago or so, and she also does yoga consulting and employee wellness program consulting. And Erin was also in a corporate world, and now she likes to help companies to improve their making healthier food choices. And she has healthy vending. And myself, being a nutritionist, I like to help people to improve their overall well-being by the power of food. And we are all by individuals, so it boils down to each of us and figuring out what works for you. And I think we ran out of time. And if you have any more questions?
Okay, John, I wanted to give Ben an opportunity to kind of run Q&A and make you introduce yourself. So, Ben, you want to take roll here and just make sure everybody introduces themselves.
I didn't mean to run through it.
John's up, so get him to.
Hey John, would you mind introducing yourself and then
Sure.
following your-
Yes, John Fisher, Brandon Wine Electronics. We have 2 employees and then getting a 3rd employee thanks to Monica's introduction. We build aerial surveillance cameras. So, and my question is, the reason I'm standing up is because I was sitting down too much, slouching. Have you seen much effectiveness in ergonomics, sit-stand desks, and also with the new fitness bracelets? Have you ever used those and seen any effectiveness in that?
I have not used the fitness bracelets.
I've seen it. It encourages people to do it, focus more. And then you get a result. You have a baseline, you feel sluggish, and then you start using it. You see your steps and everything you make makes a big difference, and you can document it. It's
I haven't seen any companies, at least in our exposure, using them as part of the wellness program. Doesn't mean it's not happening. But as far as the ergonomics go, I have seen that in companies manufacturing focused, because the ergonomic injury in some instances, depending upon, what body you have to report your incidents to, your safety incidents, ergonomic injuries can actually go against your safety incident record. And so it was more as in a preventable, because darn it, if we're going to have a safety incident, you hate to say this, but it should be something associated with the manufacturing, which is inherent risk that they have to deal with, rather than a much more controllable risk of somebody behind the keyboard. So that's something that we would look at as far as an industrial company, to encourage that.
And we're actually, funny you mention that, is this week we have a meeting with someone who's into ergonomics and talking about a partnership where we would now have a partner that's in that area.
I think, programmers, carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
yes. Make sure you go and stretch.
That's something that they don't really account for in corporate America, is that being bimodal and having 2 legs, we evolved from walking all day, and now we sit all day. And that's kind of not what we're meant to do, but it'll be interesting to see in the next 10 years, like standing desks like this are more acceptable in the workplace. how you met and decided to share a vision?
You tell the story really well.
You saying it's a love triangle?
It's a love triangle,
Triangle.
but Erin tells it really
For
good.
sure. So, yeah, it was actually last year. I had left my corporate job and was out doing my networking because I realized I needed to make some friends and learn the area a little bit more. And that's where I met up with Anita. And Anita's like, she's a nutritionist, and so I was kind of all interested in what she was doing. I was starting out with healthy vending, and she's like, oh, that's great, I want to learn more about it. So we just wound up chatting after the meeting. And then she said, well, you've got to meet my friend Keeley. And Keeley's like, she's doing the same thing, she's leaving, she's doing this yoga. We all have this, and so we all had this real kind of the same shared interest in that we want businesses to make money because we have to survive, but at the same time, we don't want to just make money. We want to do something that we're very passionate about, and that's going to make a change. Hence, kind of talking social entrepreneurship, not by name, but in reality. So, and then as we were talking, we realized we said, okay, we should help one another, because Anita, you're probably in the corporate world, you're talking to HR directors, right, if you want to get in and start offering nutrition services. And Keeley, she knows all about the programs and statistics and whether they're getting their bang for their buck and the most benefit from their wellness program. She's got the beginning of that diagram side of things. And I said, well, yeah, I'm the same people because, I want to talk to HR directors. They're putting in wellness programs, but then they've got, junk down in the vending machine. So as we started talking, what started out as joint marketing said, wait a minute, when we started thinking about that whole life, we could actually offer the full set of services, and we're all networking with one another, so why not throw that into the mix? So that way, when we are working with our client and we design this full menu, we don't necessarily have to rely on everybody being on staff. We'll pull into this smaller network. It helps smaller businesses get the exposure that they want to these larger companies. And at the same time, it helps us round out a full set of services for people with a shared mission. All the people that we deal with, they're all very passionate about what they're doing. So it just sort of happened.
Yeah. It fell into place. And then we all came from corporate backgrounds, so we all could speak personally about just the changes that need to take place, and then we all practice what we preach. So.
Then we want to change the word.
I have a lot of other questions, but I wanted to ask if you guys are familiar with, so meditation and mindfulness are now entering the workplace as a functional means of providing benefits as well as lessening adverse impact. You mentioned absenteeism, but there's also workplace deviance, people acting out, and other things that are bad. But what about the companies that are hesitant to integrate more specifically things like meditation or workflow that are a little more abstract?
You have to take, at least when we look at a company, your company might not be ready to jump to meditation. You might have to start with taking a walk around the block.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on the company that you're dealing with and working in, taking them in baby steps, because it's the changing of the culture. If you walk in to a traditional company, and I'm thinking of some of the law firms I worked in, and I walk in and start saying, okay, everyone, half-hour meditation like today, and we're going to do yoga, you're going to instantly be met with resistance. Whereas if you start slowly telling them, if you take a walk, it de-stresses you. And then once they get comfortable with that, here's some other steps that you can use to de-stress. And here's some other ways to make yourself healthy. And this is what this works. And you slowly integrate it. So I think over time, mindful meditation in a workplace is going to be more and more accepted. It's growing. But I think it's baby steps that you have to take.
You may have to do some icebreaker sessions with them. And again, think about that cycle that we talked about. It's very continuous. So as Keeley said, as everybody's, you're starting to get that culture shift more towards that mindset. They're trying more things. You go back around it the second time, then you start, you can bring in more and more services. But you may have to have a few sessions, probably more than what we have time to get into today. But there's a lot of different techniques and people that you can bring in that'll put everybody in a circle and kind of make them do something that just helps them start to break down those barriers, especially if it's a very stuffy environment.
You can also use statistical studies that done and present it to that specific company and talk about it. It works. Why don't you give it a try?
Yeah, all that stuff makes perfect sense to me. Since we're talking about integration, I wanted to ask, and I know you guys are more geared towards entrepreneurs, but what would be like a good way to introduce healthy food to corporate America? Because I think that is such an area where people, wellness consultants could be stonewalled. So how do we integrate organic food specifically to corporate America?
A couple things. Now I deal with this quite a bit because of my other business that's healthy vending. And one of the things we do, even just in basic vending machine food, to try to get people not being irritated because I don't serve Coke or Pepsi. Okay, it's a pure, so there's different products. One company, they really got a wellness program and they're like, we don't know what's going to happen. They wanted a vending machine. So they started out with prepaid cards that we use, right? So they loaded them all up with $15 to get them started over that hurdle. When it comes into the food in the cafeteria, you can have a section of, bring a Weight Watcher program in. You don't have to convert all of the food over, but at least have a program of, the Weight Watchers, there's a couple of other ones out there, that's a part of what the offering is. Again, that's slow introduction. And then finally, one of the other barriers that you see to switching over to a healthier foods environment is the costs go up. Okay, and they can go up significantly. You remember that slide we talked about in the beginning of how much more expensive a healthier diet could cost? Employers that are serious about it will subsidize. Okay, so they can either use subsidy to help defray the costs and bring it down to encourage people, or they can subsidize to even do a further significant reduction just to encourage them to eat there versus anywhere else and have a full set.
You can also contact small local vendors to ask for samples like fruits, veggies, or any other local store to introduce new foods to the employees to try out.
That was actually another question. I was going to say, healthy foods are good, but how do you incorporate like local farmers and stuff? So as well.
It's making a commitment to your local vendors and who you work with.
And then we are so lucky in the Westchester area. We have the Growers Market, we have the Artesian Market, we have Wegmans is not far, Great Pumpkin offers local fresh food.
I mean, one of the things with corporate America, you gotta hit the bottom line. I mean, when you go in, if you're dealing with the stuffy, traditional stuffiness, they're gonna hear about, we were talking to someone just last week, all he wanted to know was the bottom line, how much do I save, how much do I save, how much do I save. So you just gotta know who your audience is and make sure when you talk to them that you're addressing the concerns they have.
Buddy, check. And we should probably wrap it up and. Anybody else?
So thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you
Go
so
ahead.
much.
And we can be reached, we can talk to you on an individual basis anytime if you have additional questions. We are here local.
Yes. Good luck to all of
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.